1 in 4 women will experience pregnancy or infant loss in her lifetime, and yet for many, the journey is walked in silence, hidden behind closed doors, misunderstood by loved ones, and often met with words that wound instead of heal. Today on Vital Voices, we're shining a light on this tender reality during Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. We'll hear from Doctor Tazz, fertility coach, women's health advocate, organizational consultant, author, and host of the upcoming Fertility Empowerment International Summit on October 12th in Grand Bahama. She is dedicated to walking alongside women and families through seasons of heartbreak, healing, and hope.
Today's episode of Vital Voices is brought to you by Oak Tree Medical Center and Wellspring Lifestyle Group.
Are you enjoying Vital Voices? Do you find our conversations educational, engaging, and inspiring? Then like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell to keep updated on new episodes and more.
Vital Voices.
Welcome to Vital Voices, the podcast where we amplify the stories, insights, and expertise of the people shaping the future of our communities, our conversations, and our country. I'm your host, Alexis Burrows. Thank you for joining us. In today's episode, we're entering into a deeply important and often overlooked conversation: pregnancy and infant loss awareness. Our guest, Dr. Tazz, is a fertility coach, women's health advocate, organizational strategist, author, and so many things. I'm going to just start calling you Slash. And she's been a voice of encouragement, education, and empowerment for countless women navigating the complexities of fertility and loss. Together, we'll explore not only the emotional and relational impact of loss, but also the ways we as a community can show up with greater compassion. So whether you're someone who has lived through this pain or you simply want to learn how to better support those who have, this conversation is for you. All right, welcome back to the show, Dr. Tazz.
Oh, I thank you so much, Alexis, and I love that. Right, the one who's here to slash.
I know, right? It's just there's so many titles. I think when we interviewed you the first time, I think we introduced you primarily as author and host of the Fertility Empowerment International Conference earlier this year. And now we have a lot of things that we have behind that name, which is awesome, because I know you're doing work in a lot of different spaces and a lot of different ways around the conversation of fertility and infant loss, pregnancy loss, that sort of thing. So we are ecstatic to have you back on the show. What people may not know is that, we tend to focus so much of our energy and attention during October on breast cancer awareness, which is obviously a great and very important cause. But I think sometimes it often overshadows some of the other things that are, awareness months during the month of October. And one of those is pregnancy and infant loss awareness. And so we are glad to have you on the show to talk about that topic with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Alexis. I'm really excited to be back on Vital Voices. I think the communication that is coming from this program has been one that has definitely helped to change the mindset and narrative around a lot of topics. And this is definitely one of them that merits additional conversation. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, like I said, you operate from a lot of different directions now in this space, but let's take an overarching question. Why is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month such an important observance?
Great question. Well, the reality is it's so more common than a lot of folks realize. When you look at the data, you're talking 1 in 4, and this is information coming out from the Center for Disease Control, right? And even as we look at the infant mortality rate in the Bahamas, it's one of the higher ones in the region, as was recently reported by the Minister of Health and others during a recent census. So this is an area where it requires us to really, sit up and pay attention, because we're talking about this being a women's health issue that is more prevalent than many of the other health issues that we more commonly speak to.
It is an important conversation when you just look at the raw numbers alone. That 25% is very high, and I think having the conversation is critically important, because there are people that I know because of our personal experiences where family members, friends, people like in our church environment who have suffered miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies and things like that, but it still isn't as common a topic as you would think it would be, given how many people it affects. So
No,
yes, it is
it's not.
important to have this kind of conversation. Now, and I think it's important for people to understand too, because like I think a lot of times people hear this and they think miscarriages, right? As like the only or the specific thing. But when we talk about pregnancy and infant loss, what kinds of experiences are we really talking about?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks say, "Oh, she had a miscarriage." Everybody, people have miscarriage all the time, right? But no, we're talking about more than just that. We're looking at early miscarriages that can be anywhere within the first trimester to ectopic pregnancies, and those are pregnancies that occur within the tube and can cause life-threatening issues to an individual, and actually even possibly even render them
Infertile.
Yeah. Then there's stillbirth that occurs. Those are births that occur after 21 weeks. And those are very traumatic because usually individuals are having to give birth to that child because they're no longer able to have like a DNC or being able to do them on their own, deliver them on their own. So they actually have to go through the birthing process as if they were delivering a live child.
Yeah.
And then there's neonatal death and losses, that occur through fertility treatment. Those are all things that sometimes may not be visible to everyone, but they are very real. And each experience is unique and deserves our acknowledgement.
Yeah. From my experiences, it's traumatic in every instance, but I feel like just personally looking at the stillbirths one, I feel like that's probably one of the hardest ones to go through because you go through the full process of delivery and you don't go home with your baby. And I think that like, 'cause I know people personally, I feel like that trauma it's a different kind of trauma. But you're right. There's so many different variants, like there's so much variation as to how it can happen. And perhaps that's probably one of the reasons why the number is so high. Because there's a lot of variety in how this happens to people, unfortunately. So,
if I could stop you there for just a quick moment, because I do want to give space for those who have all the various type of losses. But for myself, and in this conversation, when you said they don't go home with a baby, right? They actually give birth. Well, in my case, I delivered my twins, my first, successful, as I would deem it, pregnancy after fertility treatment. I delivered my twins, and because I was on a business trip, I had to have them cremated. And so I did leave with my babies, but I left with their ashes as I traveled back home. But that's the reality that individuals who go through these experiences, it may come where they may be traveling and they're having to go back with their ones in a capacity that they never expected, or they're now we have walked with others who had experienced them in the hospital. There's the funeral directors that are now taking their child from the hospital versus them taking them, like you said, in their arms. So, it's interesting when you said the word trauma. It wasn't until, I would say, in most recent years, because this happened over 10 years ago now, that I really placed trauma to my experience. I just considered a pregnancy loss, and I was beginning to speak a little bit to it, but I never really had attached the word trauma to it before. But it is one that I've had to process on another level.
Yeah, because it's loss, right? When lives are lost, a lot of times what you consider, especially if it's a young life, you consider all of the hope and the future and the things you had in mind for like what you would do and all of those things. So it does add to that, right? So it's like when people die in older age, a lot of the sadness is you're only left with the memory, right? And so it's like you get trauma from both directions, no matter how old it is when a person passes. But I think it is that all of the things that you pictured feel like it's stolen, and that's where the trauma comes from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Outside of any of the actual just physical process, because again, that in and of itself is an entirely different conversation.
Yeah, there's the physical
right
there too.
So, before we move on, if you could set one ground rule, like for compassion for this conversation, what would it be?
Every loss counts.
That's
everyone.
Good. Yeah.
Everyone. And every person grieves differently. So sometimes we look at how somebody may exhibit strength and fortitude in the face of loss, and that's okay for them. But that may not necessarily be the way you carry it. And so in not comparing, we need to give space for listening and honoring, regardless how an individual may be carrying a loss, because every loss counts. Whether it's 6 weeks or 40 weeks.
Yeah.
It matters.
And I think, my wife had an ectopic with our first pregnancy. And, we have 2 kids now running around, but there's still moments where you think, right? So like there's a Forrest Frank song where he talks, I think he redid the hymn I'll Fly Away. And in the song he mentions, I hope we'll see our little baby soon, speaking obviously to someone who's had this kind of loss. And it just we've been listening to his music a lot recently, and I was listening to the song the other night, and I asked my wife Paige, I was like, do you think like our baby that was the ectopic is like up in heaven waiting for us when we get there? And I like, you have these thoughts, and that's like our daughter's 7, that was like over 8-9 years ago now that happened, but it's still you still have those thoughts and those considerations, right? And I think that's why you're very right. It was like when you said that every loss counts, then I think it's good for people to just know that going into the conversation, because sometimes we can get flippant about it depending on people's lifestyles or their personalities and things like that. But at the end of the day, that's still it's a very difficult experience to go through as a woman, as a couple, as a family, depending on where you are in your life when it happens. And so I think that's a good point for everyone to kind of consider as we go through this. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and for those who are going through it, knowing that their loss counts, extend grace to themselves.
Yeah, that's good.
Extend grace to themselves.
Yeah.
As they go through the journey.
So speaking of the journey, and kind of, trying to understand it, from your perspective, you have been working with women and families. What are some of the most common ways that pregnancy or infant loss is experienced? And then I guess, what are some of the areas of confusion that you often have to help women and families with?
Yeah. So one of the most common, we do have individuals who experience early miscarriage, right? Within the first trimester. And it's unfortunate that most times those are often minimized, right? Folks will be like, oh, that happens all the time. And it's only when it happens to you that you sometimes hear people now saying, oh, that happened to me. Oh, you're going to, have another one. And so because somebody may have walked through that journey, or they know many others who may have, then it becomes minimized. But no, while it is common, let's not minimize the loss, especially in the early phase.
Yeah.
And then other common ways, like I mentioned earlier, we do have stillbirth and neonatal death that has those layers of medical and emotional and systemic trauma that could be very intense, right? Other common ways, and sometimes people don't recognize this. I just have a young lady who I've been coaching, who her IVF cycle was not successful. But those fertility treatment losses can feel isolating because there's no baby to show for what they went through. But the grief is still very real. And then, sometimes as it relates to the confusion, many women are confused about maybe the timeline or the cause or how much time they're allowed to grieve, how, the society may look at them or view them because maybe they're taking longer to get past, as we would say, what they were dealing with, or when will they get over it. And that sometimes creates confusion for somebody who's walking through the journey.
Yeah.
Like, should I have already gotten over it? Like, what's wrong with me? And those are things we just need to, realize you need to extend grace to yourself and not allow the noise in the market to get into your head,
right?
Because your journey is unique to yourself.
Mm-hmm. What would you say are some, like, you mentioned that the journey is unique. What are some of the unique challenges that women face when trying to process loss that isn't always visible to others?
So, I'm going to speak to a couple I've recently been working with. And what's been unique to their journey has been the dynamics of their parents' involvement. And how their parents perceived the loss may have been able to have been avoided, or maybe there were parts of the pregnancy that was not disclosed that, if they had known, maybe they could have tried this way, right? So that's unique. And what, when you say invisible, right, to others, their other surrounding community may not see, because then all they see is supportive parents, which they are supportive, but yet it creates a unique dynamic for the couple that's going through it, because they have these individuals who love them, but yet have a perception on what could have been. And granted, those parents, they're going through their own form of grief for having lost their grandchild.
Right.
But now the couple is trying to navigate their loss while also navigating their relationship with their parents. And so in that instance, I work with the couple in trying to recognize their loss first. Like, let's focus on you and your healing journey first. I mean, and that's my primary focus, the couple that's in front of me.
Right.
And then we're going to extend to in bringing their family into the coaching experience, to how their process is actually impacting them in their healing journey. So that's just one of the unique challenges that could present itself when you have losses. And then there's the cultural narrative, right? Folks saying, man, you could just try again, or maybe it wasn't meant to be. And when individuals hear that, it invalidates how they're feeling, which that's like, can we not do that? Please, can we say that you do not need to tell someone just try again? In my instance, because my pregnancy loss was so visible, and well known, what many people did not realize was that I actually, instead of them praying that, when I try again, I would have a successful pregnancy, I needed them to first pray that I would even be able to get pregnant, And so saying it wasn't meant to be, or just try again, that narrative doesn't necessarily help somebody who's going through the journey, especially like in my case. I couldn't just try again.
It's not that simple, right?
It wasn't that simple.
Yeah, because I know I recognize for us, our loss was in December of 2016, and by September of 2017, my wife was pregnant with Scarlett. Right. But that's not everybody's situation. That's not everybody's journey. And then especially when you consider if you are doing things like IVF and stuff like that, then it's like I imagine there's a whole process involved in that.
Right.
And so it's not that simple. But I do think that this is where some of the variance in how it happens and what stage of pregnancy, all of those things kind of come into the conversation. Right. And it becomes important to recognize and understand that, because I do find that sometimes people just don't know what to say.
I don't.
Right? And it's difficult because you feel the pain. It's like you want to hold it against them, but at the same time, like, we had to come to the recognition of, sometimes people they don't know what to say. They don't know how to behave. They don't know what to do with it. Right? And that can be as close as family, friends, people that you hold in dear value in your life, and you look at them, like, you go home and you think about it and you're like, what are we talking about, right? And so it is important to understand that, but it like you said, it for the couple, they have to process that first. It's their loss first, right? And then how to navigate the rest of it.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. I think like you say, there are individuals they hold in high regard. There are individuals who love them and care for them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily know what to say because they have not been exposed to these scenarios or ever been educated on how to deal with these circumstances when they arise.
Right.
That's why education and empowerment on these sensitive topics within our workplace, within our churches, within our community as a whole is so important, because these are not unique scenarios. But the more we educate and empower individuals of these occurrences being very real, being very common, how then can we educate them on how to be sensitive, things that they should say, things that they can do that would actually help an individual that's going through this journey versus just telling them try again, right?
And I think sometimes it's important to, like, you sit yourself in a room and you consider, when you look at that 1 in 4. So if you're sitting in church, right, and there are 200 women in that church, you can sit comfortably knowing that probably 50 of them have experienced this loss, and allow that to kind of sink in and consider just how frequent it is and how much it happens to people, and perhaps just, like, again, having these types of conversations, making people aware, will help to kind of shift the conversation and help people to know how to navigate and help, right?
I mean, if you take, I mean, like, I'm glad you used that analogy, but even like in an office setting,
same thing,
you go into an office and maybe you work in a small team, right? And it's maybe 10 of you that are in there.
3 of them. It's that's how you have to think about it.
That's the reality.
Yeah. You talk about support. What are some of the signs for a woman who's gone through this that may indicate they need additional support beyond family and friends?
Yeah. So usually prolonged sadness or inability to function in daily life. It's expected that individuals will be sad. It is a very traumatic, very difficult experience. But when you see individuals who are not able to eat, not going outside, they're withdrawing from their loved ones, they have these intense guilt moments, they're usually needing another layer of support that their family members may not be able to provide them. And when that occurs, that's when, sometimes they may come to me as a fertility coach, or I would even, depending on where we're at, would recommend them to go and see a licensed psychologist who would be able to help them, maybe even a psychiatrist where they may need medication. So it really is something to be attentive to. I have worked with individuals who, from the time it happened in the hospital to later when their family may identify, hey, maybe you just need to talk it out with somebody. But it's very important for folks loved ones, work colleagues, to look at individuals who've gone through this and really see if there's any persistent anxiety or things that may be affecting their relationship or their physical health, where they would need to recommend that they get additional support. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And individuals who decide to make that step in getting additional assistance or support should also give themselves grace as they're going through the journey and not allow anybody to invalidate they're doing that. So, like, I'll share with you that, like, one of the couples that I was working with, they had reference to the husband's father, that they were speaking with somebody and getting additional support, and they hinted that they would eventually like them to join in because of the family dynamics that's impacting their healing journey. And I was like, yeah, y'all do that. Right. But yeah, it's important to pay attention to the signs.
Yeah,
it's important to pay attention to the signs.
How do you help people who are considering trying again after a loss, and what type of, like, emotional and practical preparation would you encourage?
Well, before any couple considers trying again, I always encourage them to give themselves time to grieve and heal. And I won't say heal as in terms of heal as if it's a finite thing, right? Because I don't think you ever really are healed. You are constantly healing.
Right.
But, and to know there's no right timeline, right? So, but I do believe the grieving process is necessary to like allow give yourself time to go through that process, to process what you have lost, what you had desired. And then second to that, address medical factors with their provider. Because while there is emotional readiness, there may be also physical and medical readiness that may be needed. Like for individuals who may have had a loss. I mean, I had a couple who actually had a loss delivering their child stillborn via C-section, right?
Oh.
So there are time limitations with that physically before, you know,
because you've had major surgery.
That's major surgery. So there are factors emotionally and practically to consider before trying again. You know, for individuals that I work with through my programs, you know, we do a lot of journaling. There's also prayer and support groups. We set new expectations. We normalize, you know, what mixed feelings of hope and fear are that may be existing as they're processing trying again. But all of that is necessary before taking that next step. I mean, there are some where one partner is like, yeah, let's, you know, I just want to have my baby. Let's go again. And the other one is still at the place of, I'm fearful of trying. Like, I don't know if I want to do this right now. And so having those type of communications are so important between each other in preparing so that you can truly be, and I don't want to say truly be because,
but as best prepared as you can be.
As best prepared, exactly. As best prepared as you can be for the next journey.
Listen, I will tell you, you know, when after we had Scarlett, so when my wife was pregnant with Scarlett, she was hospitalized 5 times throughout the course of the pregnancy, and immediately after having gave birth. And I would say it took me 4 years to even like entertain the idea. And it wasn't like it wasn't an ongoing conversation, right? Like it was something that every so often would pop up because we knew we wanted a boy. And you know, we always knew we wanted at least 2 kids, but it wasn't really a conversation like that. But when I would come like, I you know, you go through one experience and then you go through the other one that was harrowing in its own right. And you're like, yeah, I can't, because to me, like I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, yeah, but you are going on, I know you are going on the table, but it's like, if something happens and you don't come back, right? And it's these are the thoughts that go through your mind. So, you know, it literally took me almost the full time between when we had Scarlett and when we had Asher to even consider having another kid. Like, to even be like, I'm okay with it. Like, I know what I wanted and I know all of that, but like the consideration of the process. And then what's funny is, because God is funny like this, Asher was the easiest pregnancy from the standpoint of like, because it was literally just going in for when he was due. That was it. In terms of like there was no hospitalizations, there was no emergency room visits, there was none of that. When she was pregnant with Asher. And so it's like, you know, I feel like it was God laughing at me a little bit. Is this what you were scared of this whole time?
Right.
You know, but you don't know that. And then like you said, having gone through, you know, like I said, and this is a good segue into our next question. You know, it's like, how do partners grieve differently, and how do couples stay connected as they go through this journey after having suffered this kind of loss?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I'll use myself as a classic example. In fact, the person that's written about in the book, right? You have different approaches and different perspectives and different ways that individually grieve and move forward. And I think it's necessary to give space to both,
Mm-hmm.
and for each couple, each person in the relationship to give grace to the other,
Mm-hmm.
and how they may actually process it. Like you were saying, in your case, you had to take some time because you were thinking about, you may be on the table and I got, really be the one to not necessarily say deal with, the aftermath, but
Mm-hmm.
you're still trying to process what that even looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In my case, having had, the loss of my twins and then a subsequent loss, which a lot of other individuals, most folks weren't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
When I finally was pregnant again, everything was textbook. Everything was going great right up until about 21 weeks. And here I am in the hospital, right, in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, what's happening here? I'm not keeping anything down. There's this excruciating pain. Doctors are trying to figure out what's happening. Morphine becomes my best friend once they figure out that I wasn't in labor.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm patched up and I'm discharged, and I'm a week later readmitted.
Oh, boy.
That time, and this time of year is always very nostalgic for me because I was readmitted a second time in September.
Mm.
And imagine, here we are now in October, and being in the hospital from September till late November.
Wow.
75 plus days.
Oh, wow.
Okay. When I was readmitted the second time, and they still were not able to figure out exactly what was happening with me. Baby was looking good, but I myself was not able to keep anything down. There's a fear now of, like, can she keep this baby? Can she live
Right.
this pregnancy? Like, what's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer allowed to eat. I'm on a TPN line. And TPN, for those who don't know, that's where they're essentially feeding me nutrition through my veins. I went 14 days without eating. And it's like, okay, how does she carry a baby and not be, fed anything by mouth during this time and survive? So my husband, he's dealing with all of that.
Right, because this is the time when the baby is going through serious growth and development,
yes,
and they're like, this,
all
everything
all
is
of
supposed
that.
to be happening. All of the
All
good
of
stuff
that.
is happening with development at this point.
All of that. But the pain and all that had subsided, and I was starting to feel better. And so it's like, there was a moment where there's like, oh, she may be able to go home. Like, these numbers, I remember amylase and lipase. I'm not the medical professor. I'm a doctor, but not the medical doctor.
Right.
And so it's like, I became so well immersed in the terminologies. And so when all of those levels started to, level out, and they were like, you probably will be coming off the TPN, you could get discharged. I was excited, but there were like 3 tests I'll never forget. It was like the last Friday in September. The doctor came and he's like, there are these 3 tests. If your cervix, I think, was one, the amylase lipase levels was another, and there was another one. I can't remember exactly what it was. But he came back in, and like the end of the day, and by this time they were already talking about discharge paperwork and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm calling, family and friends, like, I think I'm going to go home. They're saying I could get an at-home nurse who could come and change the TPN line, dressing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor comes in about 4:00 on a Friday evening, and he says, hey, you did all these tests and all the things. This one was good, this one was good, but this one, you're going to be here until you deliver. And I'm like,
because that's almost 11 weeks, 75 days. That's almost 11 full weeks.
It was. Like, yes, sir, it was.
3 months in the hospital. Jeez Louise.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, that's a season in my life while there was, a healthy concern on whether the child would survive, right? Given my history and everything else. And my husband, like, will I even survive? Once I was stabilized with all the other things, we have to sometimes look at what's the lemonade we can make out of these lemons.
Right.
I then was able to work from my hospital bed. I was able, my mom, I believe, sometimes I wonder if my mom prayed for me to stay in the hospital, like, because I was in Florida and she was in the Bahamas. So I'm like, she's like, at least somebody watching her around the clock, making sure
Right?
she get her food. So yeah, I mean, I was being fed on time. I was being evaluated every day. They check the baby's heartbeat in the morning and the evening. Um, and yeah, I that Friday when the doctor said that, initially I started to go into what I think most folks would as they're going through post loss, and then also processing where they're at in the moment, where you begin like to have a self-pity party, if you may. We begin to pity ourselves. We begin to become frustrated, we slightly depressed. And then my faith just kind of took over. Within like 20 minutes, it's like, no way are we going to allow the enemy once more to think that he's won. And then start to process again all the things that I did have at my disposal. I'm here in the hospital. Like, doctors are going to be seeing me around
all
the
time.
clock.
Like,
I'm being fed.
Is there any safer place for this baby to be
like
at this
where
point?
else? Yeah, like where else? And I had to, say, Lord, at the end of the day, I thank you. I thank you.
Yeah.
I thank you. And that, while that's not how I would have wanted my first pregnancy to be, living in a hospital, I wanted to have the beautiful baby shower at the, hall and all the things. That's where he had me to be.
Yeah.
And he was able to take, like I said, the lemonade of all my experiences and help me to, see the bright side of it and navigate that journey, successfully.
We talk about how, I guess, culture to some degree impacts this stuff, right? How do you think cultural norms shape how families process pregnancy and infant loss? Because, I feel like there's a certain understanding when, even if it's like a child, a teenager, an adult, a parent, like there's this understanding, like people understand loss and people grieving, but I think sometimes people don't understand the grieving process when you lose a pregnancy. And I don't know how much that's a cultural issue for, us as Bahamians. Obviously, you've worked on both sides of the water, so you may be able to kind of speak to this from either side. But how do you think culture impacts how people process the loss?
I think the culture, in Caribbean and or Black American communities is the silence. There's a culture of silence.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it. We have an expectation that people are moving on. I remember there was one time a family member had called me after a loss, and it had been a few months. And they're like, "How are you doing?" I was like, "I was actually just watching something and I started crying, and they were like, "Oh man, I thought you had moved on."
Wow.
Right? And I know they did not mean anything by it when they said that, but the reality is when we don't talk about it, because there's a culture of silence, nobody's acknowledging it. We don't hear it talked about in our workplaces. We don't hear about talk about at church. These conversations around pregnancy loss or infant loss, it's like, nobody wants to talk sad talk, right? And we get that. But I think making space to acknowledge that these are realities, especially during Awareness Month like now, and or during, Mother's Day weekend, acknowledging that there are women who had given birth to children that were stillborn, or maybe infant loss early on, or even miscarriage. Like, making space to recognize that they do exist is where we really begin to chip away at the culture of silence and normalizing that loss is real.
Yeah. Boy, I think it's that part, I also would want to stick a pin here to, just because we're on the culture side of it. What I wish we could get away from culturally, is well, y'all ain't had no churn yet. Because people, because it's usually talked about in hushed tones and in silent corners, people don't stop and think, right? So like, I know even for me, right? After we had our loss, I changed the way that I think about that, and I stopped asking people because I realized, yes, my wife had to have emergency surgery, but honestly, there was only family there. And so the knowledge of what happened wasn't broad and far reaching. And it hit me. I'm like, but Alexis, imagine how many of your contemporaries maybe who haven't had kids yet, or you don't know. And so like, even now, like I have friends that I know that are married. And it's like, you have the thought, but I realize I just don't verbalize it. Like, you still get the thought because that's naturally how we are. But I realize I stopped asking people that question because you just don't know how insensitive that could be for people, because you don't know. Right. And I think, again, having the conversation helps to kind of frame this for people, because it's been 3 years. Oh, where the grandchildren at? Or where the babies at? You know, where the this at? Where the that at? And sometimes it's like, if you're in pursuit of career or a particular goal, maybe you don't get the questions as much because people just translate it to, oh, you know, well, your wife's a physician, or, oh, you know, it's this or it's that or the third. But if it's just like in your mind, just two regular everyday people, well, where the children at? You know, I think if there's one thing I would encourage people to stop doing, is asking that question, because you don't know people's circumstances.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Like, stop it. Like, really just stop
100%.
Please stop it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been told when I would visit, y'all always, because during that season when my husband and I, we were actively trying, right? And even with the fertility treatment, that, there were periods where it just didn't work. We would visit and family be like, why y'all just don't stay still, man? Just stay still and have some children. Like, what? So us not traveling to Europe is gonna cause us to get pregnant? Like what? Like, how does that work?
it's
it's no. So stop it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think shared on another podcast, I say, mind your own womb, please.
Yeah. It's a healthy reminder for people, because you just never know, right?
Yeah.
From obviously this is a conversation that is always going to have grounding in faith.
Yes.
It's how we approach a lot of topics on the show. But specifically in this instance, how can faith communities, churches, church groups, church ministries respond in ways that are truly supportive and not dismissive?
Yeah. Be present and not performative. Like, don't just show up because it's something that you do, and it's like, be really present when these situations happen within your church family. And then also move from, there's some people, I might mash a little toe here, but, shift from fixing with scripture to creating safe and empathetic spaces.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of folks who may find scriptures and try to use it to kind of, fix the narrative on, why this may have happened and, why the person should be able to move on, and that, God is a keeper and he will, take care of you. Yes, he is all of those things. But can we create safe and empathetic spaces where individuals see this is not something that you're doing just now because this is what I'm going through, but you have already created these environments for me to feel safe, to have the conversation where I can feel safe and know that you're not going to be telling me, or somebody is going to come around here, talking about, the next pregnancy, you're going to have the baby. No, let's acknowledge this pregnancy, please.
Yeah.
Can we acknowledge this child?
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of times people think by speaking of what will be, that fixes the pain that a person may be going through. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for hope. But can we make space for acknowledging where an individual is right now and the journey that they're walking through right now?
Yeah.
And you can do that through pastoral care, support group, remembrances programs during the month of October, like now, or just simply sometimes listening to an individual.
what it reminds me of, and I think this is very important for people to remember, especially people of faith, right? There's one single biblical reference to Jesus weeping, right? And it was at the death of Lazarus. Now, people sometimes will say that and they end there, right? But imagine that Jesus knew fully and completely that he was about to go and raise Lazarus from the dead, but yet he still wept. And I think that's important for people to recognize that
He was present.
even knowing that he was about to bring this man back to life, he wept. And I think that I look at the Bible as being so practical sometimes. Like that, I think that was our.
That's good.
I think that was our. It was our leeway to grieve, because you can grieve a loss, right? Now, if that grief takes you into deep and dark places mentally and spiritually, then you will need to get help. But there's a natural, if Jesus could weep at someone that he was about to bring back from the dead, I feel like people are allowed to grieve loss, within a healthy space. And obviously if it goes beyond being healthy, then you get people help, right? And again, I think it goes back to your earlier point, keep mind your own womb. I think that's a very good one. That's probably that might be another book. So I think it speaks to this next question too, like what are ways that meaningful and healthy ways that you've seen families honor their babies that they've lost and kept their memory alive?
Yeah. So one that I like to do, especially when I'm speaking to a lost family, is tell me your child's name. I want to know their name. I want to say their name, because I think speaking their child's name lets others know that they are part of this family story.
Right.
So definitely, ask for the baby's name. Don't just, the baby or sorry for the loss or, just get their name and say their name. Maybe even getting a blanket or a candle that has their name on it, a memory box that has their name on it. Plant a tree. One of the activities I participate, there's an organization out of Dallas. They actually are now nationwide in the U.S. They have annual remembrance walks. That's MEND, Mommies Enduring Neonatal Death. They have a annual walk that they do, and it's so amazing. That last year I was their keynote speaker. They were close to 1,000 individuals that were there.
Oh, wow.
And it's a short walk that was maybe about a quarter mile from the main church to a garden area that they had. And there they called every child's name. If the parent had submit their name, and there were babies that had died from 30 years ago to one day before the event that they acknowledged. It was so powerful. It was so moving. And yet each person that was there felt remembered, felt that their story mattered. Because like we said at the beginning, each loss counts. Hearing my children's name out loud, because I had 3 babies that someday I will see in heaven, to hear their names spoken out loud, that was so meaningful. And so this is just an opportunity during the month of October for us to acknowledge that, again, the loss is real. And these are a part of individual stories.
Yeah. We talked about where the church fits in, to this equation, but I think a really good question too is, how can workplaces be more compassionate, more supportive towards employees and families who've experienced a pregnancy or infant loss?
Yeah, that's good. The thing is, a lot of workplaces don't address these issues. They don't usually have these conversations. But the reality is they happen even in the workplace. I think I shared on your platform earlier this year of a loss that happened in a local Bahamian government building, right, on a floor where the individuals that were a part of that department, somebody went into the bathroom, and the most that they could say was a scene. And when the janitor came to clean the space off and they closed the bathroom off, they came back and let the manager on the floor know that somebody in here experienced a loss in this bathroom. Their bathroom was somebody's baby's graveyard. And what was very difficult about this situation was it's a very small team on that particular floor. Nobody left work that day. So the reality is, whoever it was that experienced that loss did not deem their space, their workspace, to be safe enough to disclose.
Right.
They needed to go home and deal with what they just did.
That means nobody in the office knew that person was even pregnant.
Nobody knew they were pregnant. Nobody knew they were pregnant, and they did not leave. Nobody left, and everybody was back the next day.
Right. Nobody called in sick.
Nobody called it. No.
Yeah. When you told me that story early in the year, I thought it was in the U.S. I didn't realize that was a local office. Wow.
That was in Nassau, Bahamas.
Wow. Yeah, it's
yeah. Go ahead.
It's mind-boggling, but I do think that's why I'll take a moment to shout out Ahmad Rashad Thompson, who I know you recently spoke at the Disrupt HR event. When we had him on the show talking about the upcoming event, he mentioned you as one of the people he was most excited to hear about, because prior to conversing with you, he didn't quite, and being, I guess, at the conference earlier this year, because I know he was a speaker at the conference in March or April. It was
April.
Right.
April.
And, he indicated on the show, like, this is all foreign to him, because everybody in his family, his close friends, everybody just got pregnant. They had the babies. They had maternity leave, and everything was just fine. And so he found it so meaningful when he understood how many people it happened to and how much it impacted them. And I think for someone like him who's in that HR and that leadership and training space, I think it's critical to have voices like those and people in those spaces understand and then bring the conversation forward. And so, shout out to him for having you at the Disrupt HR event. I heard it went great. It was a great night by everybody. But I think things like that are important, because you get, like, I know for you, I imagine you were talking to a room full of people where you had HR leaders, managers, executives in the space, and it's very helpful to get that message to those ears as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, because the thing is, silence, while maybe not intentional, can deepen somebody else's pain.
Yeah. Yep.
A simple "I'm sorry for your loss" from a leader or a colleague could mean the world to somebody. So one, if it, within the workplace and you're aware of it, acknowledge it. Offer flexibility, not just sympathy. Consider looking at your leave policies and maybe even having a compassionate leave for early pregnancy loss, right? Allow phased return to work or remote days for individuals who may experience that, because, grief doesn't end just after a few days off. So maybe it is, offering a period where they are able to work remote or phasing their work return. And then I'm a big believer that we have to equip our leaders. I introduced a framework when I spoke, referred to SEEN, SEEN, where we need to speak, equip, empower, and nurture our teams, right? And when it comes to the E, in terms of equipping our leaders and our managers, it then allows them to be able to respond with empathy rather than avoidance when these situations occur. Where we're able to train them on clear guidance on language that they could use and support their team members without prying. Because we had that conversation on the panel that Ahmad was on, where somebody was like, sometimes I wonder if the HR director is just prying to know my business, right? But there's language and guidance that we can provide and train our leaders on to help them with that in the workplace. Yeah. And then there's our policies and creating safe and quiet spaces. We just need to foster a culture of care for our team members in the workplace. And it's not like, if I give this person a concession, somebody's going to take advantage of it. We got to walk away from the mindset of when we give, somebody's going to take advantage. You're rarely going to find somebody who's going to pretend like they had a pregnancy loss to take advantage of a policy for that purpose. You know, and if they do, let that be between them and God.
Yeah.
I can promise you, your empathetic response is going to pay off 10 times, if not more,
in the
for
long
what
run.
you have provided to that one, or more because of policies that you may have provided.
Yeah, you know, it's that like I said, that conversation about HR and leadership in the corporate space is very, very important. And hopefully, as more and more people hear conversations like these, it will help to drive change, meaningful change, in the corporate world. You know, as we prepare to wrap up, you know, I think one thing I would ask, you know, if you have someone who's listening right now who is smack dab in the middle of going through this circumstance, who's gone through a recent pregnancy loss, an infant loss, what encouragement would you offer them?
One, know that healing through this journey is not linear. It's going to be ongoing. It's going to be evolving. You know, take time to shift from maybe daily pain to integrating remembrance for the one that you would have wanted to have in your arms. To maybe even shift your mindset to reduce fear when it comes to trying again. Sometimes fear can be a chokehold, and it may be time to also reframe the journey, you know, that this is a new chapter and not necessarily repeat of an old, right? And then I like to recommend for folks that are going through this process to always look to have a supportive team, whether they, you know, get a fertility coach, whether they, you know, join a support group, whether they lean into counseling, you know, definitely look at ways of surrounding themselves with positive influence during this season. And then also create joy rituals, you know, find small ways to celebrate while holding space for the past, because I do believe that joy and sorrow can coexist. And sometimes we need to ensure that folks know that, hey, if you lost a baby, that's painful. But at the same time, you can still have very joyous moments, and don't allow anybody to diminish your joy and or your sorrow because of the way you respond during either of those occurrences.
Right.
So, yeah,
that's good.
What I would say.
So, you know, before I let you go, obviously we mentioned in the open, you have another edition of your Fertility Empowerment International Summit, this time in Freeport on October 12th. Let the people know a little bit about that, and then how they can get in contact with you, you know, to learn more about your work, your coaching. If they're looking for, you know, corporate consultation, just drop the people all your information.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's the reality. We have the annual conference that we do in April, and I'm going to plug the save the date in right now for that as well, which is April 16 and 17, 2026. We will be returning to Atlantis Resort for the third annual. But when we hosted the one this year and also last year, we had individuals that traveled from various family islands, and some who came in from Grand Bahama and Apico, and they're like, when are we going to have something like this in our community? Like, we need more community awareness and advocacy here. And so, you know, I traveled into Grand Bahama in May. And yeah, I mean, folks on the ground are like, we need to have more of the conversation here. We're very excited to partner again with Doctors Hospital, Grand Bahama Power, Grand Bahama Resilience Center, you know, community activists who are doing amazing work to really put on a summit that will empower and educate the community. We have over 7 doctors that are going to be there. We have patient warriors. And while it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, we don't want to dismiss the fact that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month as well. And there are individuals of childbearing age who are dealing with cancer. In fact, one of our panel speakers, she's 29. She's 29 and diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. You know, and later on in life, you know, those are things as it relates to her reproductive health that she would want to consider. So we're going to have some real conversations around that and how, as a community, we can do more and do better.
Yeah.
In breaking the silence around these topics and changing the narrative, having individuals to know that they're not alone. So we're having the summit. It's going to be Sunday, October 12th at the University of the Bahamas, the North Campus. We're very excited to have them partner with us on this event. And it's going to be a great time. We're going to have a great time. We're going to empower, we're going to educate, we're going to remember, and we're not going to rush the process. So it's a half-day event. And so we want to invite folks to visit fertilityempowerment.org. That's fertilityempowerment.org, where they can register or they can WhatsApp me at 827-8299. Again, that's 242-827-8299. They can send a WhatsApp message to that and we can get them more information.
Awesome.
But as to where to find me, Dr. Tazz, that's me on all platforms.
Easy.
And that's doctor spelled all the way out.
Easy peasy.
DoctorTazz. Yeah.
Awesome. So great information, great conversation again, as always. Friend of the show now. We have to officially dub you friend of the show. I see you have another friend of the show who's speaking, Dr. Christine Parker Curling. She's also a good friend of the show as well.
She's one of the doctors that will be in Freeport,
yes,
by the way.
That's what I'm saying.
A very expert endocrinologist.
I see you have seven physicians: Dr. Ann Roll, Felicia McBride, Dr. Tonette Hanna, Dr. Seda Bow, Monique Pratt, Dr. Alexandria Stott, and Dr. Christine Parker Curling. It's quite the lineup you have there. So if you're in Grand Bahama, or if you just want to take a day over and catch a Grand Bahama version of the summit, all of the information is there. We'll drop it in the show notes as well for anybody who's interested. We'll put it there for them to get it quickly and easily as well. Thank you once again, Dr. Tazz, for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us on Vital Voices today. We always appreciate your conversation and all of the work that you're doing to bring education and insight into this very critical topic.
It's my pleasure.
Awesome. So as we close today's conversation, I want to pause and honor every woman, every family who has carried the weight of pregnancy or infant loss. You are not forgotten, and your babies are not forgotten. A heartfelt thank you again to our guest, Dr. Tazz, for bringing wisdom, grace, and hope to this dialogue. If you or someone you love is navigating this journey, please know there are communities and resources available to walk with you. To our Vital Voices community, let's remember that our words, our presence, and our compassion can truly make a difference in the lives of those silently grieving. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected, stay well, and stay tuned for the next Vital Voice.
We'd like to thank today's sponsors, Oak Tree Medical Center and Wellspring Lifestyle Group.
Are you enjoying Vital Voices? Do you find our conversations educational, engaging, and inspiring? Then like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell to keep updated on new episodes and more.
Why you put this?